for the day 2 and the third session of PSYWC, that is Pune Section Student Young Professionals Women in Engineering Congress 2020. PSYWC envisions to provide its members a platform with dynamic career opportunities, paths to connect with academicians, scholars, and entrepreneurs from diversified fields, and a rewarding experience of blending cultures. The flagship event of IEEE Pune section has always been a colloquium that brings together youth with the successful professionals and experts who endure their ideologies and success mantra to the youngsters. I would hereby like to call upon Mr. Jagdish Chaudhary, sir, Vice Chair of IEEE Pune section, to address the attendees. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Nishita. Good morning, everyone, and I welcome you to this prestigious event of IEEE Pune section PSYWC 20. First of all, let me thank the organizers and especially Dr. Mane sir, Meera Thorat madam, Bhaskar Mishra, and Gaurav Sonawane for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to connect with all of you. It is always a pleasure to connect with young students and professionals. See, yesterday you got a view of, a complete view rather, of IEEE and its activities from Mr. Dinanath Kholkar, Mr. Girish Khilari, and Amar Buchade sir. So all these three people shared about IEEE. So now you are already aware that it is one of the largest technical professional body in the world, and it is one of the biggest knowledge generators in the world. So this is the power of IEEE you have got a feel of. What I am going to touch upon today is that what are the practical benefits of being an IEEE member, and I will do this with by sharing some practical examples and some real life stories, so which will give you a feel of the benefits and as to why you should also seriously consider becoming an IEEE member. So if you have to summarize in terms of some of the top benefits, what I would say is one of the important benefit is impactful volunteering. The other one is quality networking, and third one is exponential lifelong learning. These are very valuable sort of takeaways you get from IEEE. So let us take them one by one. Take volunteering, for example. Volunteering, see, the power, IEEE sort of unleashes the power of a volunteer. So volunteering and leadership development are two sides of the same coin. So what do you mean by a leader? A leader is one who takes responsibility. So you take in any meeting, suppose there is some new idea, and the one who says, okay, I will take ownership of this. The moment that person says that, people start rallying around that person. So that voluntarily sort of taking up ownership and responsibility will automatically sort of transform you into a leader. So that is the power of volunteering. And see, IEEE has a very you have seen it, the technical strengths of IEEE, the conferences, etc. One of the most wonderful thing about IEEE is its mission. The mission of IEEE is advancing technology for the benefit of humanity. So you can just come to think of it. This is a technology for benefit of humanity. If you say, then what happens is the entire sort of gamut of things, anything under the sun can be taken up as an initiative. It only depends on your passion, your area of choice, and your ability to dream. The bigger you dream, there is unlimited power with IEEE, with 4 lakh professionals who are already very creative, very influential. Most of them are engineers, so they are already sort of in a very vantage position. What happens now is that that entire power comes behind you. You have to just dream, and it has to be aligned with benefit of humanity. So anything under the sun, the good initiative will be for benefit of humanity. So anything can qualify. So I'll give you one example. There is a program called Eureka. So this is a technology dissemination contests for engineering college students, where they go and this youth go to schools and sort of educate the school children about technology and science. Now, one of our past chairs, Dr. Mani, and I was working on this last year. And see, it comes under this Education Society of IEEE. So we were thinking we wanted to do there was a good response, and we wanted to do a valedictory event, where we wanted to give away the awards. So we started thinking of as to who should be the chief guest. And between Mani sir and myself, we were brainstorming, and we thought that since it's an education related event, we should have someone who is a topmost authority in the field of education. And we just thought of Dr. Kasturi Rangan, who is leads the committee for this latest national education policy. So the committee which has designed this NEP. So we approached Dr. Kasturi Rangan's office last year, and I was thrilled. And in 2 days, we got a response from his EA that Dr. Kasturi Rangan has accepted your invite, and please share the detailed logistics. So then it was also gave me I was privileged enough to sort of go to SPPU, where he was put up in a guest house, and I got a chance to pick him up and take him to the venue. So a phenomenal opportunity to chat with such an eminent personality. So it is up to you. For example, another example, there is a initiative called STEM to STEAM. Now here, what we are trying to do is we are trying to introduce liberal arts in the STEM curriculum. So, yesterday, Kolkar sir was telling that everybody has a hidden artist in them, and due to academic pressures, they may not be able to focus on that activity. But now, see, and with this new age, where visuals are becoming very important in terms of technology, the entire field of creativity is also very relevant for technology. So considering that, it is high time. This idea was given to us by Dr. Mashelkar that it is no longer STEM, but it should be STEAM, where they added A for arts in that. So we were trying to, and see, we were already supporting Kelkar Museum in this context. So many of our executive committee meetings used to happen there. And there we sort of thought that we need some sort of a mentor who sort of guides this initiative. So we reached out to noted singer Mahesh Kale. And we said, we were through one common friend, we reached out to him and we sort of meeting with him. And we had blocked 30 minutes of his time, and we had invited him for a cup of coffee at JW Marriott. And what happened is he was talking for almost 2.5 hours with us. He got so excited with the initiative. And after that, in his next visit from the US, he visited the Kelkar Museum. And that day, in next 24 hours, there were 80,000 likes for his post. So that is the power of involving someone. So this is, see, we took some responsibility. We didn't even know Mahesh Kale, but suddenly he became a friend. And so that is what I was saying. That it is just limited by the size of your dream. You dream big, and you can create wonders. And see, you can't dream in the air. You need a support, and that is what IEEE offers: complete flexibility and unconditional support if your cause is good. One more example I will give you. which is where I was directly involved. See, there were a lot of farmer societies in Maharashtra, and our TCS founder also, Mr. F.C. Kohli, said that you should do something for the farmers. And we decided in IEEE that let us form a special interest group for affordable agriculture. So I took ownership of that activity, and I started involving stakeholders. So we involved 6 leading engineering colleges, which also incidentally includes AISSMS, IOIT. Others were there like PVG, VIT, VIT, PICT. All leading colleges were there. And what happened is there was such an overwhelming response from the professors, from the students, and it was a phenomenal journey. And so I was talking about the power of the other benefit of networking. So suddenly, all the principals of all these 6 colleges, the management people of all these 6 colleges, students of these colleges, we all got connected very closely. See, we set up these 6 labs. There were inaugurations. So we had one major inauguration in MIT where Rahul Karat sir was there. Even in AISSMS, Mani sir had organized a big event for. So just the beginning. So the labs were set up. We got connected with agriculture college. The principal of agriculture college was very enthusiastic in supporting us. So you can see the networking. It doesn't remain to your own field. We start networking in a very diverse field. So this is another beauty of IEEE as to how you can navigate. The other thing is exponential learning. And again, exponential learning and professional development going hand in hand, because with the knowledge economy, your knowledge decides how your professional career sort of progresses. So from a professional development angle, it's a lifelong learning, because continuously something or the other, like take example of this event, there's so much learning happening. Moreover, why we call it as an exponential learning? Because see, there is something called a category of distinguished lecturers of IEEE. So these are these DLs. These are people who are masters in their own area. So these people, when you hear a talk from such people, for example, for this World Telecom Day, we had invited Dr. Harry Quinn of TCS for one of the talks on artificial intelligence. And from hearing from an authority like him, your clarity around what is AI goes up multifold. It's not no longer an incremental learning. So it definitely is an exponential learning. So we had so many speakers, and all these speakers from say Stanford University, MIT, all these people keep visiting because IEEE is close to their hearts, and when they come to India, they definitely make time to come and visit us. And now with this virtual world, virtual events, it has become even more easier. Like people can sort of address us, a professor from a US university or European university can address us over WebEx. And that is a phenomenal thing where your learning drastically increases. So these are certain benefits. And now take an example of collaboration. So people are very forthcoming in terms of collaborating with IEEE, because it is perceived as a very neutral platform. So we don't have any political affiliation, nor we are seen as a country specific. So it's not seen as that IEEE belongs to this country. It's a global organization. So see, with all these 6 colleges, possibly their collaboration among themselves may not have been that easily possible, but all of them came on this common platform of IEEE. Similarly, the agriculture college came, the various industries came, and all of them together, though we could sort of create a phenomenal ecosystem with these 6 colleges. Our workshops happened in the Bhau Institute. It was just satisfying to see the kind of enthusiasm the students had. Initially in Bhau, we had one poster competition followed by the actual. We are told that the next workshop will be only live working projects. We don't want anything else. If it is not working project, you don't bring it. But none of the team backed out. All of them brought working projects in Bhau in October 2019. And it was a phenomenal success. And all major industry experts, startup owners, etc., had visited. And it was very vibrant kind of environment there. We also had a talk by this TCS Foundation incubator called Digital Impact Square. They came and gave their presentation. So all in all, it was a very exciting event. We also have partnered with various NGOs. So there have been farm visits. So it was such a interesting field trip where we had taken engineering college students in a bus to a farm. It was a day trip, and then they spent time on the farm. Then we had the local food there, people squatting on the ground and having food together, and all of them wearing this IEEE Foundation T-shirts. By the way, IEEE Foundation gave us a grant of $50,000, and another organization called Humanitarian Activities Committee gave us a grant of $30,000. So together we got $80,000 as a grant for this entire program. So we set up demo farms, did exhibitions, came out with a publication. A lot of things could be done. So see the kind of support you can get once you sort of conceptualize a meaningful initiative. So with this, I would just again want to sort of reiterate and mention to you the three benefits. One is quality networking, the other is impactful volunteering, and third is exponential lifelong learning. I'm sure you would certainly benefit. What I would say is now, see, many people have told you about the benefits. What I would say is it is worth trying out. Try it out for a year. And when you sort of take the membership, remember the word responsibility. Whenever somebody says in a sort of a gathering, who wants to be part of this committee, even without thinking, raise the hands that I want to be here. That don't think about whether I will be able to do, whether I have the time. See, it automatically things will fall in place. You will get the necessary support. And see, this is the place where you can take a little risk. I'm not saying you should take it lightly, but you can take some amount of risk. So, for example, here people are talking. Okay, here Nishita is talking. Gaurav will be talking. So all these people are talking. So here a little bit of things going a little in a different direction is completely acceptable, because see, this is where you are going the extra mile. So people will appreciate that you are going the extra mile and people will accommodate. Whereas you can't sort of take such a risk in your Viva, for example. So that will be like it is a direct impact to you. So the same thing happens to say professionals in their job. They can't sort of take chances with certain things. So they have to be extra careful. Here that risk-taking ability goes up, and by taking more and more responsibility and doing successful events, your confidence will naturally go up, and that is the way how you sort of evolve as a leader, and it will directly have an impact on your mainstream career as well. So this is a very good way to give back to the community and at the same time develop yourself. So with this, I would encourage you to take IEEE membership, and thank the organizers once again for inviting me, and look forward to hearing to the other speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for addressing the attendees and giving us invaluable insights upon the benefits of IEEE. Now, I would like to enlighten the attendees about WIE. IEEE Women in Engineering, that is WIE, is a global network of IEEE members and volunteers dedicated to promoting women engineers and scientists and inspiring girls and the world to follow their academic interests in a career and engineering science. Today, We are privileged to have amongst us Dr. Soma Biswas ma'am, who has been bestowed with the award of Best Woman Engineer. She is currently working as an assistant professor in the Department of Electrical Engineering at Indian Institute of Science, that is IISc, Bangalore. Dr. Soma's primary focus at IISc is cutting edge research and teaching. She works in the general area of computer vision and pattern recognition with special focus on surveillance applications and cross-model retrieval. She also has been involved as the principal investigator for many government and private projects which are of national interest, and also mentored a few startups in her area of interest. She holds a PhD in electrical engineering from University of Maryland, USA. Dr. Soma has to her credit 2 patents and has published 36 research papers, out of which 29 are in international journals and 7 are in national journals. I would now like to invite Dr. Soma ma'am to speak a few words about the same and address the attendees. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Can I, just a second. Oops. So can I share my screen?
Sure, ma'am, you can go ahead.
Yeah, just a second. I need some help in sharing. I'm not able to understand exactly how to do it. I have.
Prem, can you please give her the access? Sharing?
There is a sharing option at bottom bar.
Yes, that I've seen, but after that, I'm not able to exactly understand. So I have a PDF and also in Google Slides, which will be easier to share. So I can go to Google Chrome and then directly share the slides. Will that be okay?
Ma'am, from here, from the Cisco WebEx, you can just share content and you will get different tabs and you can select any one of the tabs. Whichever screen, yeah, I can see it now. It's visible now.
So can you tell me what you are able to see, because I can't see what I'm presenting.
I can see my research journey.
Okay, great.
Yeah, which is the PDF.
Yes. Okay, fine. So you can see it and hear me too, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thanks a lot to the organizers for inviting me. So today, in the next like 10-15 minutes, I would want to give a brief glimpse of my research journey. So I did my master's from IIT Kanpur, which was the start of research, though it was not a very in-depth research, but at least I started to know what research is, and I really started liking it. So that made me decide that I would want to go for a PhD after this. But in case you are also planning to do a PhD, I would like to stress that PhD is not just a degree. It's actually, you can say, a life experience, because it teaches you a lot of things from other degrees, like say a BTech degree or a master's degree, right? Because one is it takes a lot of time, and second is you really have to be persistent and believe in yourself, because maybe at the end of 4-5 months of hard work, your entire work that you have done will get rejected and people will not believe that it's a good work, right? So it's very important that you believe in yourself and keep on trying and be positive. So unless you are like, you really would want to do it, doing it for continuous 4-5 years can be really painful. Otherwise, it's a really life-changing, wonderful experience if you do a PhD, right? So after my PhD, I wanted to get a flavor of both academia as well as industry. So for around 2 years, I worked as a research faculty in University of Notre Dame, which is again in US. And after which I decided to come back to India. And then I joined as a research scientist at GE Research India in Bangalore. So though I really liked working at both places, and I also really liked working at GE Research, but I still realized that I would want to come back to academia. And so in 2013, I joined ISC as assistant professor, and I'm associate professor now at ISC in the electrical engineering department. So I'll just tell you what my area is in case you all are you will be interested in it later. So I work in the broad area of computer vision, so which is a really interesting area to work in. So computer vision is very closely related to machine learning, AI, deep learning, which are kind of the buzzwords today. So computer vision is all about giving vision to the computer, right? So making a computer do things which we humans do, right? So traditionally, computer vision dealt with images and videos, and they are very important because we have images and videos all over the place. Like we take images to celebrate small and big events of our lives. There are movies, then there are sports videos, there are surveillance images and videos, there are medical images, there are satellite images, and so on. So it's very important that we know how to capture them effectively, store them, analyze them, and retrieve them as and when required. So in my lab at ISC, which the short form is IACV lab, or Image Analysis and Computer Vision lab, we do a lot of work. One is surveillance kind of work where, say, for example, you want to recognize a person from his or her face image, right? So it itself is not a very easy problem because usually surveillance cameras are far away and you will not be able to see the face properly. And though there are several works, you will finally see that if you really look at surveillance kind of data, you will even manually, we won't be able to figure out who that person is. So it's a really challenging task. We also do a lot of work. For example, we type in certain keywords. Say, for example, you would want to get a backpack, right? And you would want to see what all backpacks are there in the, say, e-commerce shopping website. Right. So this has several other interesting applications as well. Say, for example, nowadays with so many touchscreen devices, right? We, if we are not very sure of what is the describing keyword, we may as well draw a rough picture, a sketch, and give some attributes. So this is an easy example, car, we all know it is a car, but there might be a very intricate kind of dress with intricate patterns, which is very difficult to describe. So you may be able to have a quick rough sketch of it and then would want to retrieve similar things, right? So it has other wide scale applications as well. So a few points which I would like to share with all of you moving forward. So these are, you can say, learnings which you may have heard from several other places, but still I'll go ahead and give it to you because I find them like really useful in my whole journey. So one is definitely, as I said, believe in your ideas, especially if you decide and again, it's not just for like masters or PhD. It is useful whether you are in academia or whether you are in a research lab or industry. It's very important that you believe in your ideas, even when probably others are not believing in it that much. But it's also equally important that you can kind of give things up and move on, because not every logical ideas work. And this is because whenever we decide to work on any idea, there are many implicit assumptions which may not really hold in real life. Say, for example, if I take the face recognition example, I may come up with a very nice mathematical big model to model a face. But then in real life, many of these models are not entirely like 100% correct. So even if your ideas are logical, they may not work in real life. So at some point, after you have like really given your 100%, if you still feel that no, because of some reason, it's not working, you should also be ready, even if you have worked on that for quite significant amount of time, to leave it behind and then move forward. So both things are necessary, to believe in yourself and also to be able to give up your ideas and move forward. The second point, which is very important again in all spheres of life, is to not let failure or success stop you. So you would have definitely heard that do not let failure stop you, but I would also like to stress that do not let success also stop you, right? Because when we fail, right, we know that we'll have to work hard and then move forward. But many times what happens is, even when you get a lot of success for some amount of work that you have done, people kind of feel that, okay, I have done enough, right? And just be content about whatever you have done till now. So it's also important that we do not let anything, whether it's success or failure, stop you. And you should have your mind fixed to the final goal you want to achieve. So success and failure will come, right? Sometimes you'll get more of success, sometimes you'll get more of failure, but it's very important that you don't let anything stop you. The other is research is really moving at a very, very fast rate, because especially if you look at the deep learning research and all, like every day there are thousands of research papers which are being put in archive. It's almost impossible to even keep up with the fast pace that research is moving. So it's very important that you are always willing to learn, whether you are a student, whether you are a faculty, whether you are assistant professor, or whether you are a professor, or you are like someone big in your field, but then still research is moving, right? How big we are, we still need to be willing to always learn. So that is very important. The other piece of advice which I got from a senior colleague at IISc is like very important, which I would want to share, is you should always be willing to explore new directions, because many times what happens is, whether we are in research or whether we are in industry, we have a comfort zone in which we are comfortable working, right? And we know that we'll be able to do that work well. So many times we would want to stay in our comfort zone and not move out of it, either because of the fear of uncertainty. What will happen if I'm not able to do it well? What will happen? What will people think if I fail? Things, right? And it's very natural. And it's also natural that we may fail when we try out new things, but it's very, very important that we explore new things, because things will not stay the way as it is today, right? Things which are important today may not be as important like 5 years down the lane. So we should not just think about the present, that is what we are good at now, or what we can do now, but also what we would like to do like 5 years down the lane. Because with everything moving at a fast rate, unless we kind of also know what will be important, or we can also think about what might be important in the next 5 to 10 years, at some point you'll find that people are really moving ahead of you. So it's important to explore, even though you may fail, but it will help you in the long run. So finally, with this work, I got the 2018 Shri Prahlad Chhabri Award, and I would really want to thank the organizers for choosing me for this award. It was a really humbling experience. And if you can see the picture, unfortunately, that very day I had a ticket booked abroad for a conference, so I could not attend the award ceremony. So this is my husband picking up the award. And this award like really helped me in many of my research goals. First of all, in the kind of work that we do, a lot of compute power is required. So whether it's computers or whether it's GPU cards, a lot of it is required. And many times we do seek out grants to essentially purchase the amount of compute power required. So this award really helped me in purchasing some amount of compute power. So it also helped a lot the students for their conference registrations, because as you know, most of the conference will have quite high conference registration fees, especially the international ones. And so a significant amount of this award also went in. So yeah, I would like to stress that it helped a lot in achieving my research goals. with this, I would like to again thank the organizer, also the award committee for choosing me for this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the interesting, thought-provoking address. And I would like to congratulate for the Hope Foundation Research Center Award.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. So nextly, I would like to heartily welcome the audience once again for the third session of PSYWC 2020. Today's topic, opportunities in the utility sector with your branch domain, is indeed a very unique one. And I'm sure you all would gain knowledge in this sector by the end of this webinar. I would hereby like to introduce today's speaker, Ms. Sudeshna Chaudhary ma'am, who is currently working as the Analytics and Insights Partner for Utilities in Tata Consultancy Services and has a career in data and analytics for the last 20 years. She is very passionate about data and good and sustainability solutions in the utilities industry. She is also an IEEE Kolkata section member and the vice chair for Women in Engineering at IEEE Kolkata section. She is also the first chapter lead in India for Women in Data. We will be running a live question and answer at the end of the webinar, so we have enabled the feature for the same, and all of the doubts will be answered by ma'am with her vast expertise in the domain. So without spending any more time, I shall hand it over to Sudeshna ma'am to take you, ma'am.
Thank you, Nishita. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Okay, just let me go ahead and share my screen first. You're able to view it, right?
No, ma'am, right now it's not visible.
Just okay, share.
Yes, ma'am, now it's visible.
Now it's visible?
Yes, ma'am.
You can see it, right?
Yes, ma'am, it's perfectly clear.
Thank you, Nishita, and thanks to the organizers of this event. And personally, I want to additionally thank Gaurav and Nishita and Prem and all the other organizers. And I would say I'm extremely impressed with the professionalism they have and the way they have been running it, rehearsing it. So that speaks of the contribution they are already making. And I was listening to other speakers and Jagdish sir also on the benefits of IEEE. I don't think you need to really quantify benefits. You have role examples in front of you because after your education is over, there is a whole world of opportunities for you. And once you see people interacting into these positions, volunteering, and they start interacting with the industry and the rest of the world, that itself speaks of the benefits that one has. And the whole event speaks of those opportunities. So thanks again. And let me quickly speak a little bit more on my industry experience. I have been working for around 20 years now in TCS. In fact, I completed 20 years this July. And before that, I graduated as a physics honors, graduated with physics honors from Jadavpur University, and then did my master's in computer application from the same university. And I joined TCS in the year 2000 in Mumbai. And in fact, Pune has been very close to my heart because when I was working in Mumbai, um, I used to visit Pune every weekend. And that was home for me because my uncle was posted there. So good to address you from Pune after a very long time. So after starting in Mumbai, for a year I was working into portal development customer, and my work was in and around SQL queries, data analysis, search mechanism, etc., etc. And all throughout my career, when I was doing my MCA also, coding and writing queries had been my passion, one of my passions. So it started there. And when I took a transfer to Kolkata TCS after I got married, so I joined the data warehousing group. So that is how it was called. So nomenclatures change with years and time. Later on, the same practice was called business intelligence and performance management. And of course, today my current role is analytics and insights business partner for the utilities industry. So I have worked across different industries in banking, finance, insurance, retail, life sciences. But for the last 9 years, I am focusing only on utilities industry, that is electricity, gas, and water customers. And all throughout, I have been fortunate to focus mainly in data and analytics engagements, and which has been my passion of work, and somehow it has coincided with the kind of work I have been doing. And I have been a IEEE member for quite some time, and currently I'm the Women in Engineering vice chair for Kolkata section, and I have been involved in the activities very rigorously with this particular section. And also earlier this year, I have become the first chapter lead for an organization called Women in Data, who focus on working on data and diversity, that is ensuring awareness, availability, education for having more and more diverse inclusion in the field of data and analytics. So that is more or less my background. And so today I want to address all of you on the evolution of the utilities industry as of today, how the utility industry looks like, and how is it related to job opportunities, and how you can associate yourself with that. So I understand today we have a mix of participants across different disciplines. So it's not only electrical engineers. So traditionally we always associated utilities jobs with electrical engineer. What I want to address today to explain you how the changing landscape has been for the utilities industry, and how it becomes very, very relevant for all of you with your particular basic foundation in engineering, and how you can contribute further into this particular industry. But before I go there, maybe not part of this session itself, but going back, you can do a self introspection on what is the best fit for you. So we usually do a SWOT analysis in these scenarios, that for your own self introspection, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What have you developed? What is the skill that you have developed over the last 16 or 17 years of education? And what are the strengths that you think you should work upon, which is not only your strength, which is your aptitude also? Today, I will talk about the opportunities and threats and what you can find in the utilities industry in future. But you have to understand, take that understanding back and understand the larger environment, do extensive reading, and of course get yourself engaged with forums like IEEE, where you can do networking with a lot of stuff which is happening today, and it's happening and changing each and every day as I speak. So with these opportunities, you should really do a SWOT analysis of yourself, that what are your strengths which you can cash on these opportunities. And strength is not only your particular discipline skill. As Jagdish sir was mentioning, STEM to STEAM, what is your artistic creativity in you? What is that you can combine with your academic skills, and you can apply the best to the particular engagement you want to get engaged to? And that applies to your threats also. There are a lot of threats in the industry. What is your strength which you can help to overcome that particular threat? And same stands for weakness. So a very quick introduction to the utility industry value chain, because all of you in your particular academic discipline, you may not be aware of the typical value chain. So let me give a very short introduction. Then we have a quick poll to ask for your opinion about some terminologies. So a very typical utilities industry value chain. I'll just take the example of the power industry today. I'm not focusing on water or gas. So for a power industry, the chain starts from obviously producing electricity, which is called the generation. So generation can be the conventional legacy generations like non-renewable generations like power plants, oil and gas generations, and of course the renewable sources in today's world, which includes solar, tidal, as well as your wind power. So that comes to the generation. Then comes the market, that the buying and selling of electricity. It can be near-term markets, it can be long-term forward markets. Then comes transmission and distribution. That is, once the power is generated, it is transmitted through high voltage, the high voltage electricity is transmitted all across, and then it comes to the substations when the voltage is reduced. Then it goes to the distribution network, and then finally you come to your consumers. And broadly, consumers are of two types. One is your residential customers, like when we use electricity, and of course the other set of customers, which are the large customers like retail and manufacturing, etc., etc. I had a couple of videos. Nishita can send you the links later on, but I'm having some bandwidth issues, so I'm not sharing the videos right now. But Nishita, you can send it to them later
Sure,
on. So,
ma'am. We'll send the link.
yeah, if you can put up the first poll.
Okay. Yeah, sure, ma'am. Here's the first poll. I would request
So,
the attendees to click on one of the options, whichever you feel is correct.
and it's just a casual question. There is no ranking, nothing. It's what comes to your mind the most when you hear electricity for somebody. Can we see the results?
I would request Prem to please screen share or maybe show the results or read out the. Okay, yeah.
Great. So the maximum percentage is transmission lines, right?
Transmission line 31.
That's very interesting. I'll tell you why. This one. My screen is back, right? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So quickly, I'll walk you through the evolution of the technologies in the utilities industry. And first comes the generation. So traditionally, we had centrally located generation plants. So be it coal, be it gas, it was always out of a location. So the challenges or even the job opportunities where we were talking of, it was like deciding on, okay, there are excellent job opportunities in NTPC, but they are on the northeastern side of India. So traveling may be difficult, but the field work experience is very good. So all the discussions were very location specific. But again, from engineering perspective, you have a lot of basic engineering opportunities in the power plant, in the for civil engineers, for mechanical engineers, for construction engineers. On all of these areas, there is a huge opportunity which still stays today. But the technology shift has happened where it really encourages a new way of looking at things, because now we not only have centrally located renewable plants like wind and solar farm and hydroelectricity, we also now are having distributed energy resources. So distributed energy resources are like location agnostic, because they are, it can even be at your rooftop, right? It can be in a storage mechanism. It can be an electric vehicle. And another very important concept comes in is the energy efficiency program and demand response. So traditionally, the way we looked at utilities or electricity was like, okay, you will have electricity demand and somebody has to generate it. and you have to throttle your power plant to get more generation. So that is how we looked at it. But the whole paradigm has shifted, and demand response is adjusting to the adjusting the consumer's demand depending on the supply. So say for example, during the day, if the consumer demand is very high, we design rebates for them so that they have an encouragement to do more off-peak utilization of electricity. So all these energy efficiency program, power portfolio modules, which we offer to the electricity consumers, is also dominating the generation flow now. So generation is not happening, okay, you have this much requirement in electricity and so you have to generate. So it has become very, very bi-directional, and that involves a lot of digital channel works, that involves a lot of AI, as well lot of customer behavior analysis, which is a very interesting field of work. I'll come to that later on. And the whole focus on the whole skill set required for the generation industry has immensely matured. Then comes transmission. So as for the poll, most of you were reminded of transmission lines, right? So, but imagine a situation where we are staying in a world where there is no transmission line. So, of course, we don't have it today. So, I'll come to that later on. But in today's world also, the way it has evolved, initially we always thought of power flow as single direction. It's being generated, then it's being transmitted, then it's being distributed, and then to the consumer. Now it's bi-directional. Bi-directional power flow has come in distribution. We have much better storage now. That's one reason. Secondly is the renewable sources. When you are having distributed energy resources, you are having islanding, you are having microgrids, and that has given, open a whole new area of even electricity flowing in the opposite direction, and you're storing the excess energy that you're producing. And that also has given to a much more field of work around smart grid, around transactive grid, when you are doing buying and selling over it, and a lot more opportunities which comes on due to the shift from the centralized to decentralization of transmission and distribution. And the whole chain ends with consumers. So you must have heard of the term prosumers. So just to define it, it's when consumers are also producers, or you can say intelligent consumers. That is, in today's days, consumers are called as prosumers. So traditionally, when we thought of a electricity customer, it was just the relationship of between a utility provider and a customer, was just taking electricity, paying the monthly bill, and that's all. But situation has changed now. Now, with distributed energy, with the ask for more affordable and reliable secured power, and of course sustainability power, the contribution of consumers into providing a or demanding for a better customer experience has increased multifold. And in this area, there is a huge opportunity around the digital channel developments, kind of work we do around the ecosystem experience, and not only for the consumers of the utility industry, but the same knowledge is ported to utilized for the consumers for the other industries, which I'll address in another consecutive slides. Nishita, if you can
Sure, ma'am.
show the
I'll start
second
with the second point.
this is more to do with the demand, and in your view, like, which country comes to your mind when you think of a huge electricity demand with respect to the advancement they are making, etc., etc.? Which country, which name comes to your mind first?
Okay, I think we should stop the poll.
Okay. That's great. I'm so happy to see. That's lovely. So most of you are correct. And the highest percentage is, of course, for India. And there's nothing right or wrong about the answer because the demand keeps on changing. But if I look forward for the next 20 years, you will see the developed nations have a very flat curve because, of course, they have increasing demand, but they have offset the growth with excellent energy efficiency programs. So that is how you will find all the developed nations, they have a very flat curve and it's not growing. So for India, China, and other developing nations, it's still rising. And that talks of the kind of opportunities you have in India, not only to make your generation more efficient, more capable, but of course, a long-term target is also we to have to offset that growth by energy efficiency programs. We have to think of alternate source of energy. We have to think of how we grow our contribution in renewable energy more to meet the growth in demand. So there are so, in fact, just electricity demand itself has so many substreams of opportunities which starts right from generation till distribution to make the most, I mean, best use of electricity which we are generating as well as produce more. So couple of more data points if you see. The one is demand, and again the flexibility needs are also very important. Like flexibility needs come for electric vehicle demands, the kind of battery storage we are really using in today's world, the renewable energy sources which are coming on, which is also giving a bidirectional transmission distribution flow. So all of these are very like a rising opportunity for not only the already established developing countries, but if you see India's graph, it is just remarkable. And just for your information, like um, one of the most, I would say, coveted job opportunities are also coming up from NTPC, Tata Power, and other organizations in India. And I do see a shift of people really, really getting interested into join the utility core industry and work in niche technologies, which was not actually the focus 20 years back. So, just to summarize, so what I spoke of is the traditional utility was your generation, transmission, distribution, and then your consumers, the end users. And we spoke of that with the new evolution, how this traditional cycle is slowly getting evolved, and a lot of things what happens, and especially after your smart meters have evolved, how the customer experience becomes a very important field for utilities. And utilities have a very unique set of data about customers which no other industry has, not even telecom, and that is about customer behavior analysis. Now if you have like smart technology installed and that smart meters are already rolled out, your usage, your behavior in terms of using gadgets, using household gadgets, even to assess your healthcare vulnerability, the kind of healthcare gadgets you are using, how how frequently you are using, that speaks a lot of your customer behavioral pattern, and that is a very big focus in today's world, not only for the utility industry themselves, but for the other industry also. Let me give you one example with respect to the current COVID situation. So, utility billing data. So, utility billing data always had information like the financial vulnerability of a customer. So, of course, financial vulnerability, health vulnerability, these are all personal informations. They are never shared beyond the customer. But what is really shared is the insight that is coming out of it. So in today's world, after in the middle of COVID, health vulnerability is another increasing focus, which is leading to a lot of analytics, lot of machine learning AI initiatives on that, is how the healthcare vulnerability of the customer can be used for the benefit of the society. So financial vulnerability, you could always predict from understanding how the customer is going into debt, how they are paying their bills, what is their capability around that, etc., which is very beneficial to the banking industry, which is very beneficial to the insurance industry. But in today's world, the healthcare vulnerability is very, very important for the healthcare industry, for the life sciences industry. And together, there is so much of initiative, so much of work going on, which we club under the data for good initiatives, which uses this particular information from the utility world. So that is about the customer experience, not only about the customer experience, but the kind of service that you are giving to customers globally with the utility industry as well as beyond. So the responsibility of utility industry has grown multifold, because even in a pandemic situation, you have to keep your lights on. You have to continue with your services. So when you have to continue with your services, customer is continuously using electricity. So you are generating more data. As you are generating more data, you are having more data to analyze your customers for the benefit of the society, and of course, which is used for other industries. So last poll, Nishita.
Yes, ma'am. Just a minute. Here it is.
So I personally have a lot of interest on sustainability offerings for utilities industries, for data for good initiatives, and naturally that has made me do a lot of work in and around with hazards and how hazards impacts the utility industry. So today, for the rest of the session, I will walk you through two such hazards and explain you what are the job opportunities and what are the kind of work technology is doing to address these hazards. So once the poll is over,
I'll request all the attendees to complete. Yeah.
that's again very interesting, because ultimately when a storm hits, whatever we have initially, actual the outcome is power shutdowns. And this is a picture which I had taken from my window, and this is the after effect of the storm that hit Calcutta in the month of May between COVID, where it was a devastating storm. And in and around my house was on the path of the storm, so there were 3 transformers which were burnt out. And of course, it was a bit away, so I could not take pictures. And there were around 20 poles. These are all distribution poles. So 20 poles around my house, which were just grounded, or they were dangling diagonally for a period of 7 days before anybody even could attend to it. So what I want to cover here is, so even what triggered me to take this picture, I did not know that they were working. One fine morning, I suddenly heard a huge bang. So I rushed to the balcony and saw that this pole was almost in a diagonal state, and they just pulled it down. They pulled it down, and even the road was not closed, and people are coming. And thanks to COVID, people are in masks. So it was like it was like a huge chaos. So, and thankfully, the pole did not fall on somebody. It could have been. So the whole incident, I'll go through and just take a guess on how many different kind of data can be driving behind these kind of incidents, behind emergency maintenance, and how data can help in better decision making, so that we could have done the job in a better manner. So it can be 2, 3, 4, but I would say it's much more than that. So today I was just And this is just one small use case in the electricity industry is when there is a problem in a storm, how do you work for distributed network restoration post? So these are all poles, distribution poles. So while you are working on the restoration, what is the kind of problems they are happening? And what is the role of technology? What are the kind of work we are doing in the industry today in India, across the world, so that in future, yes, we cannot stop storm, but we can handle things better. We can do better predictions. And of course, when it is a double hazard, so currently when Amphan hit, we were very unfortunate because it's a biological hazard, plus it was a climatological hazard. Okay. So first, I would like to touch upon the communication. So when the poles were all down, we were without electricity for 7 days. So the communication channels, how you are informing your customers, to the residential customers, to the hospital. There's a hospital behind my house, which at that point of time had 96 COVID patients. So how do you cater to the hospital? How do you communicate to the household members of the patients in the hospital? So those become very important during a hazard, during a storm, that how do you communicate to your customers? And that requires a lot of technology, lot of digital channel developments which are going on right now. And it's unfortunately the incident I was talking of, and unfortunately the way it was handled really did not have all those means. Yes, we got SMS, we got the best means of communication which was available at that particular time, but there is a huge scope of improvement there. So that comes to communication. Then comes to I would address the location information, geospatial information together. There is a terminology called mutual aid in the electricity world. So this was a double hazard hit. But imagine a situation when location A is having a storm and location B is not. So mutual aid is an agreement where a utility from location B sends their field workers to work in location A. So now everything, when you are not utilizing the geospatial information or the location information to best guide your field workers, that how they should reach the location, where exactly the poles are lying, how, which one is the first one they should fix, etc., etc. So when a crew is coming from outside, that information is absolutely necessary. So that is how a location information makes a lot of difference. Then comes your asset information. Even to fix the pole, you should understand that what is the condition of the pole. First of all is how much damage the storm has done. That is the current condition. But what about the history of the pole? Should it be replaced? Is it something which can withstand the damage caused by the storm, or is it something which is already due for maintenance? You should go and replace it. Because in a critical situation, you don't have the luxury to do a lot of back and forth on deciding what should be your action item on the pole. So then again comes your field worker details. Then again, time criticality, I need not speak about it at all. And then of course the safety, compliance, and all of these data points are so much related together. I'll give you one example of how safety compliance is related to field workers, is related to the asset. There was a very fortunate incident in one of our localities where one of the guy who was fixing the pole got electrocuted. And the reason being, during pandemic, lot of migrant workers have gone away from the metropolitan city to their natives. So when the storm hit, the field worker availability was a huge challenge, and that is a new kind of challenge. When we talk of field worker challenge in the utility industry, it is not about who is a migrant, who is not. It was always about age. It was always about digitization of skills for the outgoing population from the field industry, because they have a lot of inherent knowledge. So it was never about who is migrant, who is not. It was never about how far is your home from the spot location for that particular field worker. So all those dimensions are now coming in. the whole definition of the problem statement is also changed. So imagine if all these data points, if integration across all these data points had worked properly, if we had all the technologies on top of the current system working and doing its best, maybe we could have catered to addressing the issues after the storm in a little better manner. Yes, we can predict also. We can do predictive asset maintenance also, depending on the weather predictions, depending on what is coming. So that is also a long-term goal. But even the emergency maintenance and restoration can improve a lot with a better way of decision making on this complex process. So this was my first use case. And I would like to end with another very favorite use case of mine. And this picture is from the current California fire which is going on. So how is a utility responsible, related, and very much involved in this fire? And what do you have as the next gen engineers to contribute in this field? Now, utilities have to ensure reliable supply. So immediately when there is a natural hazard, be it a storm, be it a fire, first thing which comes to our mind and which is the biggest inconvenience, even if you are directly not impacted by the fire, is the power shutdown. In fact, in California, they have a very known terminology now, which they call power shutdown. And that is a program that runs which proactively shuts down power in a locality which has a threat for wildfires. So I would give you one example. You look at the picture, which is right in the left bottom, a very harmless kind of a device which shows up. It is nothing but a C hook. A C hook holds on to a high tension transmission line. So on left hand side, it is a weird out C hook, and the right hand side is a broken C hook. This image was part of the investigation which came out after the 2018 or 2000 end of 2018 fire happened, and a particular utility in the West Coast was fined because the investigators finally deducted that the fire was because of a dangling wire, which actually the wire dangled because the particular C hook which was holding on to it broke. Now, it is not only about, so here comes your engineering aspect, that how good you are doing your asset maintenance, how good you are taking care of how well it should be replaced, etc., etc. But there are some more aspects to it. The wire was dangling, but why did the fire catch? Because there was a forest. Now, there comes a whole new area of work is vegetation management. That when you are designing your transmission lines, how much of vegetation is on the way? So, whether even while designing your transmission distribution lines, whether you can take care of it. Even after that happens, there is a lot of vegetation which comes on the way. How best you can utilize your workforce to take proactive measures to cut off the vegetation on the transmission line. So vegetation management, image analytics, computer vision is a big area of focus right now just to stop these kinds of hazards. So even to prevent them. Then comes the question of doing preventive, your emergency maintenance after the hazard happens. So the reliability of supply also has to take care of all these aspects, that how better you design your transmission distribution to have a reliable supplier to their customers. Then of course comes your cost effectivity. If you download any of the sustainability reports for any of the utilities, and especially utilities who are doing transmission distribution, you will see all utilities report on how much of transmission line or how much of gas pipeline they have replaced in a particular year. You will find figures like 120,000 of miles of transmission line replaced. Why is that? Just to prevent hazards, right? But how will you decide on which one to replace, which one to not? So there is so much factor of data around that. The weather data, the particular, I mean, so when a fire hits, it's not only because of the weather, it's also because of the the kind of vegetation it's there, and also depending on the condition of the assets. So all together, you have to do a lot of prioritization is which particular area of asset you have to replace. So that is just one part of a cost-effective solution. Then, of course, I spoke of sustainable business. And then comes your differentiated experience. If you read the news, if you read the media, customers, I mean, electricity customers are so flabbergasted when this PSPS runs, when the power shutdowns happens. They don't understand that, okay, how much of shutdown is required really to optimize between the risk that you are having and really to cater to the need of the inconvenience that is happening to them, because it's just not a mere shutdown, it's a shutdown for everybody, right? And of course the differentiated experience is not only about the communication, it's also about the alternate source of power. If you have a solar rooftop, you can take care of your temporary needs, right? So how good a utility is educating or driving their initiatives towards that there are alternate source of power for the customers on very fire prone areas. That is about differentiated experience to the customers. And how do we really do this? As I mentioned, the integration of processes across enterprise is very, very important. I'm building digital channels to communicate to the customer. Is it integrated well to really generate the communication when the particular application or the particular power shutdown happens? That is one point. Then comes the ecosystem play, as I mentioned before, that once you have a hazard which has hit you, how important it is for you to even share your insights, even use the data which is available in the ecosystem to give a better service. I'll give you one example. Last year, there was a fire in Northern California, and that particular utility was very well equipped with predictions because they had unfortunate incidents in the past. So, after a couple of weeks, they were ready to have all the measures to make as less casualty possible when the fire hits again. But this time the fire hit the Southern California. And see, when it comes to climate, when it comes to soil condition, when it comes to weather, the particular geography, that is not really demarcated between the number of utilities you have and their own territories. That will go by your natural setting of that particular country, particular state. So it is very important for utilities also to share their insights among each other. It's very important for also to utilities to share the insights to the other industries I had explained before, so that we can think of addressing the problem together. It is not only a utilities problem, it's everybody's problem which this kind of a fire hits. Last year there were 80 deaths in California for a single fire. And of course, I spoke of resilience to pandemics because availability of field worker, the whole dimension and the definition of availability on different factors now on gender, age, and whether he is migrant or not, location, all different sorts of parameters have to be taken into consideration for our contingency planning. And of course, you have the data monetization opportunities in the utilities industry because, as I said before, it has a very unique set of data which can be utilized by the other industries for a better service. So, taking all this together, I would like to categorize, or I have just named couple of areas of focus and what are the various streams of skills which are very, very relevant for the utilities industry. So if I have to group them, one is of course your basic engineering. Another is your contribution to the OT part of things, the operational technologies, the machines, the software and hardware around the machines, the process experts around that. Then, of course, comes your domain understanding. And then comes the whole gamut of the digital technologies, right from customer behavior analysis, gamification, blockchain, artificial intelligence, machine learning, etc., etc. So this picture which I showed as part of the example, in today's world, you will see there is a lot of investment, lot of work going on drone technologies, on computer vision, on the kind of machine learning and AI investments that the utilities are doing to do better predictions, where you need not even travel remotely, and the particular transmission lines inspector will concentrate more decision making aspects of it, looking at the data rather physically traveling, climbing up the pole, or doing stuff manually and trying to do preventive measures. So, after this, that is my last slide. I have tried to create a rough mapping. So, there is nothing prescriptive about it. This just gives you an indication. And I would always ask you to go back to your initial self introspection, think of your strengths, think of your weaknesses. And this is just an indicative mapping of what are the different skill tracks which are important for utilities industries. How important are the core engineering subjects for those tracks? How important is you should focus on programming skills, your more of IT skills, computer engineering skills, and of course your machine learning AI skills. And if you have plans into moving into business management kind of education after your 4 years of engineering, after you do that, what are your options in utilities industries? And then of course, how much, and if you really see, I have put a low priority for knowledge of the utility industry. See, whatever stream you're working in, you need not have expert knowledge in how the utility industry works. Your base foundation needs to be strong. Whatever engineering stream you are into, that is very important to develop. The industry knowledge will come automatically. The way you should grow your industry knowledge is networking with people, because the way the technology is changing, the way I had a video, Nishita can send me the video on a wireless transmission. So wireless transmission was always used in the past for small devices. You have your electric toothbrush, you have your charge pads for mobile, but wireless transmission was never used for commercial purposes. Very recently, I read through that a New Zealand company has first successfully launched, and it's a startup company. They have launched a commercial scale wireless transmission technology. Now imagine whatever I spoke you about the fire, whatever I walked you through on the storm, if in tomorrow's world, after 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, the whole world becomes wireless transmission, none of these problems will be there. Okay, we can have new problems. But then, even to address those new problems, even to cater to giving a good service with your wireless transmissions, you will need newer technologies. Technologies will keep on changing, but your foundations remain the same. The subjects I studied, the programming languages, I did my first programming in Fortran. I have never used Fortran beyond that. But the logic that is built behind that, the subjects on data structures, the subject on algorithms. We talk of AI and ML so frequently now, but artificial intelligence was a very important subject in our course in 1997. And I still remember the chapters, the classes, the insights on fuzzy logic, the mathematics that was behind that. I still remember it today. And that's so important and that's so very helpful for my work. So please concentrate on your foundation. You can always get back to me. I will answer your questions also. And but do have a focus on what you want to do. But having a focus on your foundation course, what you are studying right now, is also very, very important. So that's all from me. I think I've not delayed much, right? So I think we can go to the question answers.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for an insightful session. It was indeed a pleasure to learn so many new things about the utilities sector and how it is useful to the students of almost all the branches and coming from different domains without any restrictions. Especially the last part, which is the skill mapping, was very useful. Now I would like to start with the Q&A section. So everyone in the audience can post the question which you would like to ask ma'am regarding the domain. We shall try to cover maximum questions sequentially.
Nishita, where can I see the questions? The panel was coming up, but
Ma'am, I'll read it out if you want. And at the
okay,
bottom, you can see a chat section.
it was there. Let me check. Yep, got it.
Okay. The first question being, why are we not involving underground cable establishment instead of overhead lines, which makes the electrical system free from dangling wires?
Yeah, very good question. It's not that we are not. The same problem did not happen in Mumbai, because if you see in Mumbai, most of the places it's underground cable. So while the technology is taking care of this, and even underground cables have problem during flood. So it goes to a point when even the underground cables are impacted, and of course much less than the dangling wires. But why utilities are really trying to shift from overhead cables, overhead transmission lines to underground cables, the example I spoke of, if something like wireless transmission comes in, it completely changes the paradigm. And that will even give you something which is much more robust in terms of handling incidents or handling hazards.
Thank you so much, ma'am. The next question is, does Industrial 4.0 help in power energy systems?
Yes, of course it does. And in TCS, we have defined Business 4.0, which are the, in Business 4.0, which is to the Industrial 4.0, and the four arms of Business 4.0 are on intelligence, on cloud, and all these initiatives together is what I spoke of in the last two use cases, is what is really the driving the technology in the power energy systems today. So that is how we are changing. The whole utility industry is evolving from what it was before and what it is today. And of course, that is what is helping in evolving that industry.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. The next question is, we have wireless transmission uh, area and even has been but so less research in that field. Uh, that is a working
Yes,
idea Nikola Tesla.
yes, that's a very good question again. Nikola Tesla's dream was, I think, back in 1899, if I'm not wrong. But he did not get funding even at that time, because even to have the wireless transmission set up, the kind of powerful generators you will need, he could not afford at that time, neither did he get funding. And the business case was not there, because the cost is a very big aspect. The cost of copper wire at that time for the transmission line was much, much cheaper than going for a wireless transmission idea. Now people are seeing the advantage of wireless transmission, not only for hazardous situations, but also for remote locations. So the distribution of electricity, the need to distribute electricity to certain remote locations was not there maybe 100 years back. But recently there has been a lot of research, and I will pass you on the video which also talks of that. And there are a lot of studies going on around that. And it will very soon come into more visibility. And if there can be one successful launch commercially, though people are saying it will be only for remote locations, it's not for a commercial scale to that extent. But that is what we are talking of today. How it benefits the utility industry as well as the rest of the world is also measurable, and the sustainability factor is very important. If wireless transmission can really stop wildfires, imagine the kind of benefits that the world will be getting out of it. But there can be some other factors, there can be some other side effects which is coming out of that. We don't know that. But yes, definitely, there will be more research into that. And you never know when you pass out. You can be really working in that particular technology. And that encompasses all your streams: electronics engineer, electrical engineer, everybody, computer science. I name any field, you will have related work in wireless transmission area.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Due to the time constraint, let's just take one more question, if that's fine.
There was a question on MBA, I think.
Yes, ma'am. Would higher studies like MBA benefit to get into the utility sector?
It depends on what you want. So, in fact, I will give you an example. So, one of the business schools in India, they have an analytics club. So, I was very recently discussing that what are their aspirations. So, while they have a lot of other job opportunities, some of the students are very focused that they want to contribute to the AI industry. They want to contribute to data science. And the way you have to, the way you can do is, if you see in the skill mapping for the gamification, for the customer behavioral analysis, I had put a tick on the business management, marketing, HR, etc. So one is in typical MBA streams, some of the MBA specializations like HR, finance, etc., they are very much directly related to the kind of analytics offerings we have in our industry. And finance analytics, workforce analytics, HR analytics is not only for utilities, it is across the board. But if you have to work in core data science, definitely you can come back even after doing an MBA. You can specialize more on the business management perspective of it. So, yes, it definitely benefits, but you have to uh, decide on what should be your focus or how do you want to enter the industry. If you want to enter industry and utilize your business management skills, yes, even you can use your domain. You can introduce yourself as a domain consultant in the field I spoke of after doing your MBA.
Thank you, ma'am. Plus, like for AI and ML, I think there are many communities which are growing, which are also very beneficial to people of all domains.
Exactly.
Yes, ma'am.
And I would encourage people to be contributors in these forums, be contributors in Kaggle, be popular with GitHub, with Stack Overflow. So once it's very important to network with organizations like IEEE, with other organizations, with these AI forums, so that more you interact with people, the changing wave of technology, you will automatically be aware of it and you can start contributing towards it.
Thank you, ma'am. I think we're at the end of the session and we're almost done with all the question and answers. So lastly, I would like to thank you very much, Ms. Sudeshna Chaudhary, ma'am, for clearing all the doubts and enlightening us with your knowledge and expertise. We express our profound gratitude to you for being here with us, giving an excellent presentation, and therefore making this session very interesting and meaningful. Thank you once again, ma'am, on behalf of IEEE Pune.
Thank you. Thanks all for attending and thanks to the organization again.
Thank you, ma'am.